Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us here this evening, or if you're catching the video at a later date, thank you for checking in with Coach DC and I as we announce a big announcement, new content for this 2026 Ravens season. By the way, a lot of excitement with this Ravens team, a lot of talent on the team, like the two guys that are in the background, Kyle Hamilton, and a new coaching staff that can hopefully help these guys reach their potential, close out games. The excitement around here in Baltimore is at a high as we're in training camp. But tonight, Coach DC and I were finally rolling out content that we had planned, putting our heads together, and I could not work with a better person. I'm looking forward to this so much, just to learn from Coach DC as always, every time I talk with him. And so without further ado, Coach DC, would you like to tell everyone what our plans are for this 2026 season?
Absolutely. I'm not sure if it was your idea or mine initially or happened at the same time, but basically what we want to do is try to provide a preview that's in depth and organized, structured each week, probably about an hour in length, somewhere in that time frame, that talks about the Ravens' upcoming game. And we feel like Friday night or Fridays, Friday evening in our case, is the right time to do it as far as a preview, because so many people try to push out previews a little too soon. I mean, they're not even finished practicing in some cases, and people are already giving you a preview. So I think we'll include some film with it as well. I'll handle a little bit of that tonight as we can develop that. And we're a little bit early, a week early, right? Because the first preseason game isn't until next weekend. So we wanted to test this out, and we wanted to get some interaction from listeners, watchers, etc., about what you'd like to see or hear during a preview, because I do intend to show some film and data, and I'm sure that Jason does as well.
Absolutely. So we're getting together, putting the best of both worlds. We've both done previews. Coach done a million videos. And those of you that have watched Wednesday shows are used to me cramming a game preview into the end of my Wednesday Live when Huddle It Up filmed. So why not just create a new show? And like Coach DC said, by Friday nights, the injury reports will be finalized. We'll know who's in, who's out for both teams. So why not get together 9:00 p.m. and go live with each other every week? And Coach will bring his film. You're familiar with his. For those of you who haven't seen preview shows, just so to show you a few slides, I will have basic stats like this one, the Ravens offense versus the Indy defense. Then we'll flip it over, look at the other side. We'll have box scores, look at what the players have done so far this season, which teams are leaning on. By the way, Michael Pittman Jr., Coach, not with Indianapolis anymore. Big loss. He is with the Steelers. We'll look at where these players line up a lot, what the matchups will be. And, every week we'll have a special slide or two. Coach is going to help provide some advanced stats as well. So we're going to put all this together to make a preview show, again, live Friday nights, interacting with the chat. And I cannot wait to do this, Coach, because I really feel like it'll be something that Ravens fans will look forward to. It's hard to find a Ravens preview later in the week that really details both the film, the stats, and, you watch it on TV, the national media, half the time they're not really in touch. Maybe it's a 15-minute segment. So this is something I think people will really enjoy. So it was funny. We both had the same idea. We just had to iron out the day and time. So I love you, Coach. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. This is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, a lot of thoughts there based on what you said and just things that I had thought of leading up to this. Number one, like when so many people worked on the draftsignal.pro website, and the work that you did on the players, the evaluations on guys into the draft, I was impressed and so glad to have you interact and work with us there. And this just made sense. I mean, through different conversations that we had, and the really professional and high level communication on your end, towards that regard, kind of, I think, opened this up for me. And my Friday nights are open now. I don't coach, high school football at all, maybe sometime in the future. So this is my landing spot, Friday evenings. I would be doing this anyway, maybe not a live stream, but I would be watching film of the Ravens opponents to some degree and trying to push out Saturday morning content. I'll still do that to some degree. It won't necessarily have the same flavor as this one because you do a great job with like interacting with the chat, having a structured maybe 4 or 5 stop signs to talk about certain topics. And that's not me. Like whatever I am good at is just, if I am good at it, is just showing the film and talk about what's happening. So I feel like it's a little easier to do my job here than yours because you're organizing this, which is great for me. You're muted right now.
Thank you. That's a first in a while. Yeah, it's going to work out well because we're both working, doing things that we're used to doing. I've been doing preview shows for a while, so I have the structure down, and nobody does film like you. So, look, you're going to get to hear Coach too talk on some narrative stuff as well, because something I wanted to clarify is these preseason games, Coach, maybe you can speak to this. You're not really game planning for the other team. So when we get into the regular season, we are going to be looking at the opponent, how the Ravens can exploit them, what the Ravens have to be careful of, and all that other stuff. But for the preseason, Coach, you're evaluating your guys. So the show, not only tonight, but the first 3 shows starting next Friday at 9 are going to be a little bit different from when we get into the meat and potatoes of this thing and really try to scratch out how the Ravens can win the game.
I mean, absolutely. I think as far as the preseason goes, to touch on that last, part of what you described there, we'll probably show some film of what some of our players did well, in each preseason. Appreciate that, the funk, but I anticipate that the preseason ones would have a different flavor than the regular season, obviously. With one caveat, I guess, in the event this, not just talking about this season, but moving forward beyond 2026. I think of when we played the Commanders in 2024, right, and then played them again in the regular season. Is that correct?
It may be. I think they try to avoid that sometimes, but it seems like we play the Commanders no matter what because of the proximity.
To get away from the NFL for a moment, it reminds me of like in a high school situation where you scrimmage someone that maybe you're going to play later on in the year, or a try scrimmage where a team, sometimes teams drop out at the last second, or sometimes teams drop out earlier in the summer. And so a team gets added that you're going to play. And it's like, all right, well, maybe we'll line up in this particular formation 4 or 5 times. Let's see what their looks are. Let's see how they adjust to it.
Right.
And the NFL is different than, let me rephrase that. I suspect that the NFL has some overlap with how high school and youth football is in terms of the communication before the game by the coaches, which is, hey, what do you need us to show? Do you need us to show a bunch of trips? Do you need us to show a bunch of eye formation stuff so that, you can work on your looks? I do believe, I don't know, but I do believe that there is some of that communication at the NFL level. There certainly is youth football and high school, because I've experienced that personally as far as coordinating with the other team's coach. So the preseason is definitely going to have a different flavor than the regular season in watching the games live, but also as far as what we try to produce here, for sure.
Yeah. So stick with us. Make sure, if anything, the preseason shows aren't for you. Give us a shot during the regular season, because they're going to be way more specific and opponent driven and looking within for our own team as well. So, Coach, let's talk about something. You got a film study coming up very shortly. But something that's been burning on me for quite a while after the draft is X receiver. Maybe that X receiver can be Jacoby Lane, and we can get 2 of our best route runners in the same area on the field side of the formation to the right. So Bateman said, I'm moving all over the place. I feel like in the past, I've been a one-dimensional wide receiver. And, of course, Jacoby Lane is shining. So you're going to have some examples tonight of how these stacks look on the right side with 2 capable receivers, a little bit different than a Todd Monken-looking offense. You've done a lot of homework on Declan Doyle. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts about this. I think it's going to be great for Rashad Bateman. I think that if Jacoby Lane can hold down an X spot and be a capable player, be a jump ball guy, be a deep threat, be a possession receiver, that it allows Rashad Bateman to be freed up, put him in motion, and exploit some matchups instead of him being predictably where he has been throughout his Ravens career.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of points there. One that I think lines right up with everything you're saying, and then another that's a little bit coming out of left field, but it'll, I believe, illustrate the point that you and I are trying to make. First of all, I'm glad. I hope that they use Bateman in a more diverse way than he has been. I think that's what he's getting at when he's talking about being one dimensional in the past. And I credit him for the way that he described that. That's just a reality. When coaches or players, well, when coaches move on, players will sometimes be asked questions that they either have to sidestep completely or they have to deftly answer, but obviously not mention any names. Todd Monken did some amazing things here in Baltimore. I think we're all happy that he was here. Reality is Bateman was often stuck as the boundary side X receiver and wasn't a part of the read that often, unless you had a Flowers or a Mark Andrews, a likely motion over there or lineup over there already. I would hope that we're using everybody. I mean, all of these guys. I think that Zay Flowers is going to be on the field a ton. He'll be getting a ton of targets and opportunities with the ball, opportunities to make plays, and that's what we want. But, Surratt, Lane, Walker, Bateman, I hope they all get opportunities. I hope they're moved around. It's a pain in the butt defensively if you don't know where certain receivers are going to line up. If there's more moving parts for the defense to have to navigate, I saw a couple people say that the stream is locked up. If you can let us know if it's still locked up as far as video goes, that would be great. So we're aware of it. But I hope they move all those guys around, and I hope the target share is maybe not egalitarian, but I hope that Bateman's increases, and it certainly looks like it will if you subtract. Perfect timing putting that graphic up. If you subtract Hopkins and Likely's targets there completely, they got to go somewhere, right? You would anticipate they to go to Bateman. And Jacoby Lane is balling. Man, if you look at some of his plays from his college film last year, it's not surprising that he's making contested catches, right? That's what the film showed. I forget which team it was last year that I had film of him. Actually, one of them went down as an incomplete pass, but it was an amazing effort to come close to the catch. It wasn't Notre Dame. I forget exactly who it was. It may have been Notre Dame. Perhaps I'm mixing up the players or the X receivers that I'm talking about, but I was excited about Lane. He certainly caught me by surprise. Being a third-round pick, that's not where I believed that we would go. As far as the mixing and matching of guys, I do want to make one point, and this will require a little bit of memory on my part, and the part of other people as well. Arizona game in 2023, McDonald is still here. That's the only time I ever remember us running jet sweep and giving the ball to the receiver to anyone other than Zay Flowers. And you know who it was? It was Rashad Bateman.
Okay.
It was like a 2nd and 14, and we run Bateman in motion from the field into the boundary, and we give him the ball on a jet sweep, and he gets like 18 yards. And I remember watching that and thinking, holy moly, why haven't we done something like that more often? Basically go against our tendencies. And so I think, that speaks to what Bateman's talking about, moving around, getting different opportunities that aren't just so static. When you're one-on-one over here, he may just not be that kind of guy full time to be able to win against boundary side corners, consistently. So that's me. That's my thought on it. I think you and I are pretty much on the same page. I think most people are as well, as far as Ravens fans, at least.
I think there's a trust factor involved. And, I tweeted out earlier this week that I don't think Lamar has ever had a young receiver that they could put at X, and even if that guy's covered, Lamar would throw it to him. He didn't really trust Bateman if he was covered. And we saw when D-Hop come into the game, or when Odell was on this team, they would have guys blanketed all over him, and Lamar would still throw him the ball. So I think that this is a better role for Bateman to be part of that progression. You look at the targets on the screen from last year, Zay Flowers dominating them with 118, and then Mark Andrews with 70. And, Coach, that's pretty much has been the progression under Todd Monken for the last 2 years. It's Zay and Mark in the same area, maybe some high-low concepts, whatever it may be, to where Lamar's looking at Zay, he's looking at Andrews in some kind of order. And then if he has time, which he hasn't had a lot of time, then he can go to his back across the field to a Rashad Bateman. So it wasn't working. Bateman with only 38 targets on the year. That's not getting the most out of Rashad. He's more talented than that. So I think this would be a good time to show maybe your what you have on Ben Johnson, because I believe that he may be hiding the run game in that open practice. It was a productive week for the Ravens, by the way, especially if you count the open practice at University of Maryland on Saturday. Then you had padded practices on Monday and Tuesday. They had a padded practice yesterday on Thursday. Friday off, coach. So it seems like they're getting ready for that first preseason game next week already, aka they'll have next Friday off as well as they prepare for the Saturday preseason game. So I think that this video that I don't know, I think I like the name Coach's Corner. Let's let you go ahead, do your thing. Can't wait. I'm going to be looking forward to this every week as you talk us through some run game concepts that Ben Johnson loves that we might see with Coach Declan Doyle. Some exciting stuff here, guys. I got to be honest. I love this. I love this cut up this week.
Yeah. So you and I, we had spoke about the run game being, simplistic looking, or, not a lot of variety, maybe in the stadium practice, University of Maryland. So people that are there every day, of course, are going to see more than we do, right? And then most particular viewers or listeners here. This is just an example of something I want to show that Ben Johnson ran that I think has multiple layers to it and really uses the personnel well. It requires two high-level receivers being on the same side of the formation, and you can see that at the top. I will let the play run here in a moment, but it's St. Brown and Jamison Williams for the Ravens, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman. Zay Flowers, Jacoby Lane, Tez Walker. I mean, substitute any two of those guys. The idea is that you get two quality receivers up here to the top side of the field that kind of forces the defense to play 3-over-2. So we're talking about those three defenders to the field, lined up to the field. So I call this broken bunch, and different people have different names for it. The reason why I call it broken bunch is because you've got what looks like a bunch alignment here, but what's it missing? The tight end. In this case, it's Sam Laporta. I will say this as I go through this play, or two versions of this play. I wonder who that tight end is, because Laporta is a special player. The ability to block well and have receiver skills. We don't have that complete a tight end in Baltimore right now. We don't have that guy that can do all of those things equally well. I mean, you're talking about a guy who can go out there and line up at receiver. What I love about this play, I have it paused here for a moment, is that the initial run concept is going down into the boundary, illustrated by that red line for Jahmyr Gibbs. And the zone is all going to the boundary with the offensive lineman. Okay, I'm intentionally scrubbing this back and forth a little bit to show the offensive lineman all working to the bottom side of our screen, the same place that Jahmyr Gibbs is going, with the exception of the field side tackle. And that's Taylor Decker, who, of course, is, since left Detroit. We're talking about this guy here. So I'm going to switch to the end zone angle. I mean, it's pretty obvious why we've got to do this. If it doesn't make sense to you, just be patient, and maybe somebody will clue you in. This is the same play from the end zone angle. What it does is it really puts that field side linebacker in a ton of horizontal conflict. Gibbs, for the Ravens, it will be Derrick Henry, or it could be anyone for that matter. But in this case, it puts that field side inside linebacker in a ton of conflict. This is the design of the play. It's designed for Laporta or any tight end to be able to block this linebacker and get him going further in this direction. Why? Because Ben Johnson is trying to use the momentum. He's basically using physics. You're already moving in that direction. Why am I going to try to dig in here and get to the inside? No, let me just take you where you're going. He's just using the momentum that you already have as a defender, and I call it a wind back. What was taught to me, and other people are 1,000 times smarter than me about football, but the reason why I use the word wind back is because it's designed to go there. This play is not designed to hit on the front side. That's the whole reason why Laporta is where he is, and the left tackle to the field is locking back on the field side defensive end. Does that make sense so far?
The thing that I love about it is that linebacker right there is put in a bind, because you have to respect the highlight that you have right now is on two big bodies on that right side. And it looks like it might even be an extra offensive lineman on that side, judging by the side and maybe the numbers of them. So the linebacker has to respect the flow to the right side. He's got to respect Jahmyr Gibbs. They've probably run a lot of, just straight outside zone off of this or inside zone off of this. So that linebacker that's put in conflict is used to having the flow that way. And on this particular play, he gets a little aggressive trying to shoot the backside of it, and it's easy pickings for Sam Laporta. Love this, but especially, Coach, what sticks out to me is we see in the college game today a lot of lack of development from these inside linebackers. The college game is so spread out. There's so much passing going on that it's very hard to find refined linebackers that come into the league quickly. Even a guy like Patrick Queen can get caught with his hand in the cookie jar. He's played for a long time. So a lot of conflict for the guy there in the square where he's got to respect the initial run play. And look at Laporta just hunting that man right there. Easy cut back and a lot of options for Jahmyr Gibbs. And, I'll wait for the second play, but I think one thing that I think people watching should notice is that it takes a level of patience and professionalism from the running back on these plays to not run himself into trouble. Sell it that you might be trying to stretch to the right before you cut it back. And that's something that Derrick Henry is a master of from his time in Tennessee. You're on mute, Coach, so it was your turn.
Yeah, just a genius running back, the whole package, size, speed, strength, athleticism. But Henry is underrated, if you ask me, as far as skill goes. I love the fact that this play is set up by having two legitimate receiver threats to the top. And then, everyone else is blocking down here to the bottom. But the Cowboys don't know that. Defense won't know that. You got to have, if you don't have three up here to the field, if that means you don't have numbers anymore offensively down here to the bottom side of the screen. So they may go to a different play call. Lamar may check to something else. And that's the whole point. Ben Johnson, I'm quite sure that Declan Doyle is the same way. It's just math. It's really all it is. It's just math, subtracting three people from the run fit. I do want to show an example that looks slightly different and then pose a question to the people that are watching is, who is this tight end for us? Who is the tight end here that we think is a legit receiving threat and a high quality blocker? We don't have one, right? So we're going to have to make sacrifices as far as who this player is. Could Mark Andrews execute this? Yeah, sure. Maybe Hibner. I don't know. I know Smythe could. And the third play I'll show will kind of illustrate that for you. We still have a mathematical advantage for the Lions here, for the perceived Ravens. If they do run this, it's Jason and I's thought that these are the types of run plays that Declan Doyle did not show in the stadium practice. Same concept here, right? The backside tackle, in this case, it's Penei Sewell to the field. He's locking back on the defensive end. So he's not running the zone with everyone else. Everyone else is going this way. That's not what Penei Sewell was doing. It's essentially like a Jill type concept insert. And you can see Laporta, once again, sorry about that. Laporta once again gets to the inside linebacker. This time it's Quay Walker. When you get the end zone angle, you see it works out a little bit different. Point number one. Point number two, off screen is actually an inside linebacker, a hybrid, really, Sam linebacker. So the Packers have stayed in their base defense. Some teams will stay in their base defense. Of course, Baltimore, we're going to be a base nickel. We all know that. So even against 12 personnel, we could be in a nickel defense. That would be a nickel DB. Just off screen here, illustrated by that left arrow or that yellow arrow. Same concept. Try to pay attention to the backside of this scheme. I think Jason and I believe that this is something that you're going to see early, perhaps even in week one against the Colts. The Packers actually, the second time they saw this in this game, this is 2024 film, they were able to shut it down. They walked this Will linebacker over such that Laporta couldn't get to him. And in fact, you can see Laporta here is just barely getting to that linebacker, Quay Walker, before Quay Walker can get up to David Montgomery.
It's not a bad job by Quay Walker trying to stay disciplined in that thing. Yep. And it's just a tough ask for him to do.
It's a really demanding play, in my opinion. And the reality is you've got Jared Goff booting off of this. Well, if you can imagine Lamar Jackson booting off of that, what people said for years as far as Lamar Jackson and under center play action boot, what certain people said was it'll never be successful because when Lamar boots, this defensive end is going to chase. So anytime he keeps it, he's going to have somebody in his face. That happens sometimes. That happens to everyone. Well, what do you do then if you're the defensive end and you've actually got a guy trying to block you and it's a run concept away from you? You're dealing with, these guys are taught to read blocks. He's not going to be here if and when Lamar Jackson keeps it and boots out to the edge. That's the whole point. Ben Johnson, hopefully Declan Doyle here, is creating layers within a play that safeguard the concept that safeguard the
Yeah.
ability to avoid a negative yardage play. It's a beautiful concept.
And in fairness, I've been on shows where I've discussed this, and the design of those naked boots have just allowed that defensive end to roam free. And of course, they have eyes on Lamar Jackson. You're never going to break contain with Lamar Jackson. But yeah, watching Ben Johnson draw this up, I mean, quite honestly, Panay Sewell here could do a half-ass job, not a very good job, or just get, overmatched on the play. It doesn't take much to get Lamar Jackson going. It doesn't need much space as opposed to Jared Goff. And I wonder, Coach, my question to you is this: could this be a situation in which Lamar in real time can make a decision whether to keep a play like this? Like, he watches what the inside linebacker's doing. Maybe they got our number, look, or maybe he can sense the corners biting. I mean, you look at Goff there, it's impossible for him to see the defense, really.
Right.
So I'm wondering if this is just going to have to be a straight handoff every time, though, if they call it.
I think the one thing that I noticed and about trying to pay attention to what Ben Johnson did in Detroit and even last year with Chicago, I mean, once Declan Doyle was announced as our offensive coordinator, I was like, oh, this is great. I get to go watch Ben Johnson film again. I'm already somewhat familiar with it. The one thing I'll say is he sets plays up extremely well. And these types of plays normally are like a jab, or in MMA parlance, a leg kick. They're designed to elicit some type of response so that we can exploit things later on. Exceptional job at that level, if you ask me. And of course, Ben Johnson's obviously very young. I think he's only 38, and Declan Doyle's even younger. Last play, think I kind of answered your question there. If not, let me know. You guys have to be a little bit patient with the appearance here. This is the snow game.
You're doing great.
This is the snow game between the Rams and the Bears. So, keep that in mind. When we get to the end zone angle, it'll be more clear. But the reason why we're showing this is because this is Declan Doyle. And again, from the All-22, it's going to look really fuzzy, but he's a fantastic effort blocker. So here's
Durham Smythe, you mean, Coach?
Smythe, yeah.
So that fullback on this play is Durham Smythe, of course, on the Ravens roster. One of the reasons we signed him is he is a dog and familiar with these run schemes and the timing of it. So, if you were going to line someone up in the fullback position, you could see Durham Smythe catch two bodies on this play, and end zone angle, like Coach said, is much better.
Yeah, two. We don't have two of this guy, and he doesn't have the receiving skills of a Sam Laporta. Chicago made it work because of the other tight ends that they had, right? In Loveland and Cole Kmet. But this is, I love this scheme because you've elicited the base defensive look for the Rams. You got two inside backers, three down linemen, and the Rams are aware of what's happening here. If you look at the defensive tackle alignment and the nose tackle, they're kicked over here to this side. So they're hip to the game that Ben Johnson's playing. We want to give you a formation that you maybe adjust or over-adjust to the field, similar to, and I'm going to go back here for a moment, similar to this one, what I call broken bunch. And then we want to attack you into the boundary. And Jason and I's contention is that this is the type of thing that we didn't see in the stadium practice. Declan Doyle maybe just doesn't want to show.
Right.
Maybe they're having trouble executing some of this stuff. I don't necessarily think so. I think we've got a guy here at tight end who obviously doesn't have the receiving capability of any of those tight ends that were on the Bears roster last year, or let alone Sam Laporta, but a guy who is a tremendous effort blocker. That's him. Or rewind, like Jason said, he was the fullback. It's doubling the edge defender, which is a pain for any edge defender to deal with. In this case, Swift ends up bouncing it. It's a great concept that we think illustrates the types of things that Declan Doyle is going to attempt to do, with our personnel. We have Declan Doyle, but we don't have a Sam Laporta still. I think, the point remains.
Coach, got to give some shout outs here, taking some time here. Our guy, TY, gifting a membership to Huddle It Up Films. And remember, guys, on a weekly basis, you can watch this on Huddle It Up Films or all 22 films. So make sure you subscribe to both. If you want to make donate a membership or make a contribution to either channel, feel free. Coach and I are just happy to be here together. This is not a competition by any means. We've had talks offline that, there are a lot of great people in the Ravens community, but Coach and I feel really good working together because there's no ego involved. There's nothing like that. We're just, we're not looking for money or anything like that. It's more providing a service, and we love this. We love just talking ball and getting together. And our guy Don C, Coach, longtime channel supporter, love Don C with a $5 super chat. Jason, my brother, and Coach DC on a webcam. Nice, and your face don't suck. Your face don't suck, Coach. That's good. Compliments are awkward for us guys. Always great stuff, guys. Much respect. So Don C, just checking in. Saying we're pretty good looking, Coach. So I'll take that on any night. Thanks to Don. Appreciate you, Coach. You are looking.
He's probably drinking not of sound mind and body. So
yeah. Hey, sometimes sometimes it takes a couple of drinks. You know what I mean, to get it going. Yeah. I guess I'll curb that comment. But yeah.
I think each week I want to try to do at least 2 or 3 plays. One thing I'm committed to doing as well, probably on my channel at some point, I don't know if it'd be Saturday mornings or what, is I like to show formations. Excuse me, let me rephrase that. Let me restart. I like to talk about formations. And so I think in order to do that, to some degree, I need to present that a still frame, a still frame. Here's what I call the formation. And I've even gone out in the off season here and found other names for the same formation, but I'm not sure whether or not that would be confusing for people. The names of formations that I generally use are splitting the field in half, twin slot, twin wing, etc. So the name is to one side of the formation and then the other. So there's various names that people use.
3x1s, 2x2s.
Yeah.
Like that first screenshot, if you can go back to the first video, what I call where there's receivers are, that's a stack to me, where you see Amon-Ra and Jameson Williams. That's a stack. And, in this formation, what we saw at the stadium practice was Rashad Bateman was Jameson Williams. He was on the line of scrimmage. So, hey, I have experience at X receiver. I'm Rashad Bateman. If you want to come up and press me, go ahead. And then you have Zay Flowers in the Amon-Ra St. Brown role. Maybe Zay comes in motion on one of these plays, Coach, comes to the inside of the field and just burns people across the field like we've seen Zay Flowers do. Impossible to stick with them. So when you're talking about 2 receiving threats, you have those 2 route runners to that side, plus you'll have a Derrick Henry in the backfield, big men on the right side. Like, to me, this is just a numbers game that opens everything up. And before you respond, Coach, do you have some more action here in the chat? Thank you, guys. Love to see y'all show up. Love y'all so much. The head VP, Coach Heather, Jason and Coach DC are the best. She has been a channel member for a year. Guys, can you believe it, Heather? It's been a year since started this thing all year round. And your paso to Dwiz. Your paso means hello, Coach. So your paso to Dwiz Niz, 1999, just saying he appreciates the collab and service. And I'm looking forward to going back, reading the chat, reading the comments. Thank y'all to whoever watches this after the live show is over. I want to hear what you expect from these tight ends. Can Mark execute these blocks? I think is a real key. If not, is Cuevas the most trusted guy? Hibner did a ton of dirty work at Michigan before, at special teams, before he got to SMU. I think Hibner's a good blocker, but it remains to be seen. When we go fullback, that guy's going to be Durham Smythe, though. I feel confident portraying that. But in those first 2 examples, I think that's to be seen. Whether they trust Mark to do that, do they want to wear him out doing a lot of blocking, or is this when you get the rookie in there and trust them to be able to, basically pin down a linebacker who's in a compromising position?
So along those lines with what the point that you brought up there at the end is one of the things that, Jared Goff was already exceptional at this. Don't get me wrong. But I think once him and Ben Johnson got together, the ability to have 1 or maybe 2 plays called and then recognize what the defense is doing and then slip into another look or adjust. And to your point about whether or not they would want to use Mark Andrews there, that first screen that I showed that you had me go back to, I would say yes, because we would want to retain the ability for Lamar to check into something different if he saw the defense locked into a particular look. Now that may not happen in week 1. I'm not talking about from a Lamar perspective. basically the idea here is now, having said that, we are facing Lou Anarumo, who we've faced many times before. So we understand his looks and his structure and his scheme. I guess the idea is I'd like to see the Ravens ask a lot of Mark Andrews. He can execute that block, but having said that, I've also seen him hold in situations where he didn't need to. He's better, if you ask me, on like an arc release guy or faking a block and then moving up to the second level. So I think that I have to hesitate and stop referring to Ben Johnson. My anticipation is that Declan Doyle is going to set up plays for later on the game with his first quarter and second quarter play calls, which is what the Lions did under Ben Johnson. And along with that, the ability to adjust or adapt the play, pre-snap is important, in my opinion, if Declan Doyle brings with him the full arsenal, the total Ben Johnson scheme. That was a huge part of what they did in Detroit. Can't tell you how many times you would see Goff check into the right play, and it's like, how can he get this right all the time?
Yeah.
It had to be Ben Johnson and him working together all week, and that's the part of the Declan Doyle, Lamar Jackson, partnership that I hope we see, at least as the season goes on. Maybe not.
This is what excites me about this, Coach, because it's going to start smaller, and then as the season goes along, they're going to get more and more comfortable with each other. But one of Lamar's, I think, biggest, like where people misrepresent him, and I think that there's some, quite honestly, some bias involved in this, is they don't realize how smart of a quarterback he is. And when you're talking about being able to design something, if he sees something on that other side where those receivers are stacked, where those cornerbacks are getting a little greedy, and he really wants to put them in a bind, how about we send those guys deep and across the field, far away from that side. And if I don't like what I see downfield, I'll just keep it and go down that sideline. And then you're changing the numbers for the defense. So Lamar Jackson working with Declan Doyle, finally having that input into the offense. I think, when he comes to the sideline, he's looking at that tablet. There's going to be something that Lamar believes in, to be like, Coach Doyle, we're going to have to call this the next time we're in this situation. It might be a second and short or something where they decide to just take a shot, and if we miss it, it's third and short. But, it makes me really, really excited. And Coach, we have some more action in the chat. Thank you guys. You're really showing up for our rollout show. Heather McCubbin's gifting and membership, and Heather sending $10, just saying simply support Coach. So I'm just so happy to see people in there. But yeah, I love the breakdown that you gave, because I'm sure I'm not the only one who, when you're explaining this and you're imagining Lamar Jackson in this system and the players that we have executing those blocks, first of all, you're negating really the talent of the offensive line. The offensive line in those plays is basically there for show. All they have to do is move in the right direction and make contact with their guy. You don't need to be Marshall Yonda to run that play successfully. It just takes a little movement from your tight end. Tight end has to be a receiving threat, and you have to have a professional running back with a real pace. And again, the things that Lamar Jackson can do off of that play, as you were talking about, Coach, he likes to set you up. Ben Johnson likes to set you up. You've been studying him for years. It kind of, we talk about closing out games and so on and so forth. That kind of gets me excited for this season. Those, Declan Doyle working together with Lamar.
100%. And Ravens fans, you're going to have to forgive me for referencing Lions players and situations, but I think it speaks to what we expect out of Declan Doyle and Lamar Jackson. Maybe next week I'll show a play from the 2023 NFC Championship game. Some people will probably remember it. It's a 3rd and 13, and Jared Goff checks to a run play to Jahmyr Gibbs to the field, and he gets it because he knew the exact blitz, the exact coverage that the 49ers were playing. And in my opinion, it's not necessarily about Jared Goff, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow. I think it's about who's doing the instruction on the front end at the beginning of the week. How are they instructing it? And I think we can all relate to this, maybe not from a football standpoint, but we can all relate to it from a teaching standpoint, right? Everyone probably has some favorite teacher in their background, either middle school, high school, college, whatever, that maybe was an engaging person, but also understood how to instruct you in a way that you would remember it.
That's
and
right.
I think that if we're getting the guy that we foresee, that Declan Doyle is a great teacher. And that to me matters just as much, if not more, than how how intelligent or prepared your quarterback is to make these checks. I think that we're very locked into, as football fans, interpreting quarterbacks audibles as solely a quarterback product. In my opinion,
Right.
it's maybe it's 50-50, maybe it's 60-40 or something like that. I think that the offensive coordinator and offensive staff organizing things on the front end are just as big a part as the quarterback is. And I know that that's not a popular opinion, but that's where I am with it. And here's the proof for that for me. And then I'll let you get into this coaching staff part. Jared Goff tore up the Minnesota Vikings for 2 years. Brian Flores defense, 23-24. Go look at the stats. Shredded him. Everything Flores threw at Jared Goff, he handled. Go look at the stats. I think it's 11 touchdowns and 1 interception. I could be wrong. Ben Johnson left Detroit. 2025 last year, the Lions go 0-2 against the Vikings. The offensive line was an issue and a part of this, don't get me wrong. But Jared Goff had some really poor moments against the Vikings. Wasn't able to decipher as many things pre-snap consistently as he had been under Ben Johnson. Same guy, same quarterback, Jared Goff. Different person in charge of the offense. Ben Johnson and whoever the heck the guy was for Detroit that they fired, or essentially fired after like week 6. My point is, I think Declan Doyle, if he's a clone of Ben Johnson, Sean Payton, and maybe a little bit of Eric Bieniemy there, then we're going to be better on the field checking to things because of the instruction that happens on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and even Friday, if that makes sense.
I mean, I wouldn't have thought that, from an audible standpoint, that was mainly or coaching had a bigger part of it. I mean, yeah, I would say that the coaching has the answers to it, but it makes complete sense when you think about it on that level. And, one of the things I like about this coaching staff, I just brought it up because you were talking about them, but is that it seemed to me, Coach, that head coach Jesse Minter went out and got who he thought was the best person for each job, regardless of whether he worked with them or he didn't work with them. Could be from another team, could be somebody from his past, but someone that could get the best out of their players and give this team a schematic advantage. And I'm so looking forward to this because we saw this defense in 2023. We saw Ronald Darby ball out. We saw Kyle Van Noy ball out. We saw Matt Abike with 13 and a half sacks, whatever it was, just getting the most out of everybody on that defense. And to have that on the offensive side, and I agree, I find myself defending Todd Monken. I mean, we were the first offense in history to throw for 4,000 yards and rush for 2,000 yards in the same season. That's insane. We could do that again. Derrick Henry could easily have himself, just say even 1,600, 1,700 yards and have the other running backs plus Lamar scrambles and all make that up and have Lamar be a 4,000-yard passer again. Like, to me, there's been too many times in the past. Now, I kind of trying to leave the past in the past, but we're talking about it here, where Lamar did not have the answers, where Andy Reid, for example, ate our lunch. Steve Spagnuolo ate our lunch. Even the Bills, for some reason, after dominating them in the regular season, Sean McDermott makes a few changes, and Lamar has zero answers. No kind of counter punches were anticipated, and the game's often dissolved into, Coach, Lamar, save us. Lamar, make something happen on the scrambles, because nothing we're calling is really giving you easy completions, easy yardage.
Yeah.
The run game disappears. So these names on the screen, is something that I got excited about and, before the draft when these guys were hired. But it seems like Coach Minter just really went out, to me, Coach, and put personal relationships aside, resumes aside, who he worked with before aside, and went out and got people that matched him mentally. He's not
raised,
he's not
raised to be
like
a coach. He's raised to be a coach by his father, Rick Minter. I mean, when he got his opportunity to be a first-time head coach, agree with you. Certainly, he wasn't going to limit his potential hires to only people he had worked with. Of course, Lou Esposito is from Michigan, so you have some connection there, obviously, between Jim Harbaugh and the 2 seasons that Minter spent there. Such an interesting dynamic, if you ask me. That I know that this is not what you were talking about. That McDonald was here for 2 years, leaves, Minter eventually comes back, and there's some stark similarities between what they run. And this does run totally parallel to what you were talking about. The ability for players to, this is not said in a disrespectful way, to play above or as close to their, let's say, as close to their ceiling as possible for where they are. Ronald Darby.
Right.
I'll give you some names that are Seattle. Josh Jobe, a guy that I think got drafted by the Eagles, and I believe had been with a second stop, or maybe Seattle was his second stop, and he now just got
Alabama guy, later round, day 3 guy, right?
Yep, he just got a 2-year contract, generational wealth, and I love watching his film. He is combative. He just looks like a guy you would want 12 of him on your team on defense. And I can't help but wonder with some of these players under Minter, under McDonald, if they were in a different system, what happens? What happens to them? We've seen players, won't name them, who leave those systems and do not have the same level of success elsewhere. So I think Minter's a great teacher, and my suspicion is a great teacher isn't going to hire a poor teacher to be his offensive coordinator. We're talking about Declan Doyle.
Totally agree. Shout out to Don C, gifting 5 more Huddle It Up Films membership. We're actually at an all-time high over there on Huddle It Up Films, Coach. Probably approaching 50 channel members, which is a lot for me and my small channel. I really appreciate my football family. Love my football family. I love seeing everybody in the chat. A lot of familiar faces. And Ravens lover bringing it up. Geno Stone, career year in 2023. That's a really good pull too. Another guy I completely forgot about. I mean, he had PQ rolling. I think Roquan had a lot to do with that, to be fair. But you look at some of the names, and Marlon Humphrey, for example, has gone like Pro Bowl season, awful season, Pro Bowl season, awful season in the last 4 seasons. You can get the most out of Marlon Humphrey. Can you get the most out of Roquan? Not that Roquan has played horribly, but that Roquan we saw in 2023, Coach, was some of the best inside linebacker tape. I think, I made the statement on my channel that it was better than anything I saw from Mosley. You'd have to go back to Ray Lewis, that 2023 Roquan I'm talking about. When I made this highlight tape off the coach's film, I had to cut probably like 15, 20 plays just because it was long enough. It was an incredible performance by Roquan.
Stuff you could have included, you mean, right?
I could have included 15, 20 plays, but the highlight film was already 11 minutes long, and you've already seen this man dominate. It was crazy. Getting the best Starks, Wiggins, Jalen Hawkins, another guy that I want to talk about. Coach, I want to kind of get your opinion on this. I got a Hawkins slide as well. I'm going to try to bring up here. When we go to base defense, okay, so just for those at home that don't know, base defense, we play it approximately, if we were going to predict, about 20% of the time, and that's going to depend on what the other team does. But we're not in our 3-4 traditional base defense a lot. There's only 2 safeties and 2 corners. How do we balance that with our 3 safeties? Do you just play, your 2 first-round picks is my, initial opinion. When you have 2 safeties, it's just Kyle and Malachi Starks. Or do you use this to give Kyle a little bit of a breather since you ask him to do so much already? Who do you think are our 2 safeties when we play? Or do we rotate them and give them all like every other series off to try to save them because they're all so capable? My guess is, of course, it's just going to be Starks and Hamilton as your 2 safeties when we only have 2 on the field. But I'm curious to see, as a coach, would you try to play with that, get Jalen Hawkins involved, and take a little bit of wear and tear off of Starks or Hamilton's plate?
I think my personal philosophy lines up with what I've seen from the Chargers film. But, of course, the Chargers film is different because of who they have back there. You're not going to find me saying anything negative ever about Tony Jefferson. Huge Tony Jefferson fan. Just totally enjoyed what he's done the last 2 years in L.A., coming back from retirement and then putting up ridiculous numbers, making plays on the ball. Super brilliant and intelligent football player. Wish he'd ended up in Baltimore, to be honest with you. Again, But having said that, they don't have a Kyle Hamilton and a Malachi Starks. They got a Derwin James, right?
Mm.
My personal philosophy is that you use as many guys as possible, as many plays as possible, without ruining the integrity of your defense. And I don't think Hawkins messes with the integrity of our defense at all. In fact, I think he's really underrated. And I think Jesse Minter likes to rotate guys as well. When you look at his outside corner usage with the Chargers, some weeks I watch it and I'm like, who is this guy that's out there on 3rd and 8 and on a critical 4th down? I'm like, who is that guy? So he uses a lot of players, not just along the defensive line. Now, Henley is a different beast. Henley was on the field for every snap. Henley is a will.
That's their linebacker.
He's a will in their base defense, and then they moved him over to Mike in their nickel. So that's something for us to navigate as far as the will linebacker position. But safeties, for me, my personal philosophy would be let's use them all. Hamilton's got to play a ton of snaps. So does Starks. We know that. I really like Hawkins. My suspicion is that he's going to show up here and not just provide a nice floor for our defense. My suspicion is that he's a guy that can push us even higher. I think he's motivated to play football. When I rewatched film of the Ravens against the Patriots last year, I was struck by how often. Well, he's the guy that forces the fumble on Derrick Henry.
Derrick Henry, right?
He's an excellent football player. I would say we should use all of them. Doesn't matter what I say. It matters what Jesse Minter thinks. I think Jesse Minter's one of those guys too, but he's probably never going to take Kyle Hamilton off the field.
It would be hard to, wouldn't it? But it does. I do think that if you have somebody capable like Jalen Hawkins, then maybe that would be a good time to get Kyle, who gets beat up around the line of scrimmage a lot, like throwing his body in harm's way. Maybe you can get, you're only going to play base 3-4, maybe 10 snaps, 12 snaps, some games only 7-8 snaps of base. If you got a lead, the other team's going to have to throw a lot. So you're going to have 3 safeties out on the field a lot. But if the other team wants to bulk up, for 8 plays a game, do you give Kyle 3 or 4 of those off? Maybe, is my thought. I think probably not, especially early on. You just roll with Starks and Hamilton. But Coach, you like this graphic, and these are some of the graphics that we're going to be bringing up on Friday nights. Things like this that I put together, and going to get coaches' input on this. Coach is going to be looking at some stats. We've already talked about this a lot offline. But look at the production he got in the sack department. The Chargers, under Jesse Minter were 10th last year with 45 sacks. Tuli Tuipulotu, love that player coming out of college, by the way. Did I envision him getting 13 sacks? No. Adafi Away, 7.5 sacks in, I believe, 12 games with the Chargers. Plus, I think he had 2 sacks in their playoff game. You got a Boygby from Alabama out there with 6 sacks. The ghost of Khalil Mack with 5.5. Your guy Henley, 3.5. But just a lot of production that he is getting. And then you look at the interceptions. Like you said, Dante Jackson, former Steelers cast-off, former Carolina Panther with 4. Tony Jefferson coming out of the Ravens scouting department training to get 4 interceptions. Like, this is ridiculous production. Just looking at the players and what they're doing on defense. And, they don't put a lot of money into their defense. The Chargers didn't. They didn't put a lot of high draft picks. It was basically Derwin James, Deion Henley, and the fellas. And boy, did the fellas produce under Jesse Minter. So I find these 2 charts just extremely impressive, man, when I look at them.
Yeah, I felt like they used 45, however you pronounce his name, the guy who had 13 sacks. They used him as they used him as an interior rusher a little bit more than I thought, but I think that was part of that may have been when
that's what Ravens lovers saying here, right here, backing you up, Coach. Lines up versus so many guards.
Yeah. I feel like he was pushed inside even more on film once Owe showed up, was the point that I was getting to. It lines up completely with what he was saying there. I'm super impressed with Henley. The Colts, in the game, they scored 38 points against the Chargers. Actually, I have a way too early preview on my channel tomorrow morning, Saturday morning, about the Ravens and Colts matchup, specifically how Steichen attacks, this defensive structure, the base nickel structure. Henley is right there with the other guys that play will linebacker for me, as far as what he can do from a coverage standpoint and how he can hold up against a variety of concepts that attack him, that are meant to attack him. And look, it's a huge ask for Simpson and Buchanan to do that. My suspicion, if Buchanan is healthy, or when he becomes healthy, excuse me, is that they'll use Simpson and Buchanan at various times. I think that Jesse Minter is that kind of guy, similar to a McDonald. I've had this theory for years, and I won't waste too much time on it.
3-3, where Simpson's the walk-up guy, like we saw James Pierce at Tennessee say.
Yeah, maybe. I didn't necessarily mean both on the field at the same time. I meant
Okay, sorry.
Some rotation or some usage of both of them
Sure.
strategically. And McDonald has done this in the past. Didn't necessarily do it as much this past year in 2025, but that's because Devin Witherspoon was injured for part of the year. Josh Jobe was also injured for a portion of the year. So it made things easier for them to get the requisite snaps to Reek Woolen. Reek Woolen actually was beat out by Josh Jobe as the boundary side corner. My point in talking about that team and McDonald is I think McDonald and Minter are kind of cut from the same cloth, that they want to use, instead of using 18 players on defense in a given game, they want to use 22. And why? I think there's a lot of reasons why. If a player gets injured and you're asking, if player A gets injured, now you're asking player B to be player A, and you're moving everybody up the totem pole. The guy who's now becoming your second stringer after the injury is someone who's been on the field a little bit. That obviously lines up with my personal philosophy about usage of players as well. So maybe that's why I'm so adamant that I think Minter will be of the same vein as McDonald. If that makes sense.
Their scheme itself is the same, but that's more of a philosophical answer or a philosophical approach. Where I think where I believe that Coach Minter could do this is it takes a confident defensive coordinator to rotate to that degree. A lot of defensive coordinators, they want their best 11 guys in this package and their best 11 guys in the other package. And that's what they're running most of the game. It's those same players, like you said, those same 15 players on defense that they're using the entire game, because they don't want to give up a yard. They're not confident. They want to go out with their best. But yeah, a confident defensive coordinator, like a confident manager in baseball, like Davey Johnson, not afraid to bat. Who was it that batted leadoff? Played Jeffrey Hammonds, benched Palmero. Like, you use your players to their strength. You use their players to their strength. 17-game season, Coach, that gets longer and longer every year. You better give these guys a chance to rest, to keep their legs fresh. And I love the point that you said, well, when one of our starters goes down, because injuries are inevitable, you have this other guy who's been playing snaps here and there, so it's easier for them to come in and replace the starter if he goes down.
100%. I think the great defensive coordinators, or at least the people that I've been able to perceive and understand to a certain degree, what they're doing. Maybe I understand half of what McDonald and Minter do or have done. I'll be satisfied with that. I think the great defensive coordinators are great teachers, and a great teacher is confident in their students or their athletes in this case when they go to take a test. That's pretty right. Much as a teacher what grades to expect. I hate to say this, but what range of grades to expect from certain students, as you approach the test, or at least you should, if you're a teacher who actually pays attention. And I think the same thing happens as far as coaching. In my own experience, I can remember three games vividly where I knew going in, I was like, I don't think we can do all of the things we need to do to get this done. So, I think that, Minter and McDonald are both cut from the same cloth, that they're great teachers. And I think in this case, Minter has hired some great teachers, of course, the first of which is Anthony Weaver. I think Weaver coming back for the defensive line will have a huge impact on that graphic that you've got right there. And in fact, another graphic that will be related to it, which is just overall pressures.
That's right.
I think that number was really deficient last year for the Ravens. I don't really refer to pressures because I know that
sometimes it can be a tricky false flag type.
And people are misleading, sometimes intentionally, about it, to be quite honest with you.
Right.
So I don't refer to it at all because I don't really trust anyone who puts that information out there. Having said that, we could all see it, that the Ravens didn't get enough pressure at all in 2025. We were fortunate in some cases to get a high number of sacks in 2024, Orr's first year. I think there was some carryover, from what McDonald had. Huge loss with Matabike last year. We've now added Hendrickson, the player you just put up there, Calais Campbell, Zion Young, who's going to have some impact as
Love
well.
him.
I mean, the defensive line quality is of a totally different variety for 2026. Mentor's been blessed. I think Mentor's just one of those guys. He looks like one of those guys that's been blessed as a coach everywhere he's gone with good talent, good coaches around him. And there's nothing wrong with just saying a person is blessed and enjoying the time you get to observe them or be around them. It's not a criticism. He's just meant to do this.
I want to plug something on the channel as Tila message mentioning it. Mike Green was the first highlight. And again, these aren't highlights like you see for anyone who's unfamiliar with the channel, with a lot of crowd shots and music and whatever. It is straight from the All-22. Like Coach DC likes to do, no fluff on these highlights. Mike Green's coach was about 8 minutes long of him just kicking ass. And a lot of it was in the run game, doing a lot of dirty work, getting some late some quarterback hits, and just making some impressive plays. And they put a lot on Mike Green's plate as a rookie, especially after they traded Adafi away. You're talking about playing in that base defense, doing a lot of run defense, wearing him out, playing a ton of snaps, after you go through the combine and rookie camp and all that, put a ton on Mike Green's plate. So yes, Coach Mentor, I agree with you, Tila. I believe Mike Green's going to play when it's 3rd down and 12. I think it's going to be the guy you see on the screen right there. Obviously, Trey Hendrickson, Mike Green on the other side with like a Tavius Robinson or even a Zion Young rushing over a guard. And that 4-man rush is going to get home, and Mike Green's going to be a big part of that. And I just want it for Mike Green, because if you watch that highlight video on my channel, Coach, of Mike Green, you will see a player who did a lot of good work for the Ravens last year and really didn't get the payoff, in my opinion, that he deserved with like 2.5 sacks or whatever he had.
It's a great group, man. I mean, Green is a part of it. Those guys are competing with each other, quite obviously, to get snaps on the field. But I don't think that, again, hearkening back to, talking about the will linebacker position or the DBs, I don't think that the D-line group is going to be anyone among that top 6, 7, or even 8 guys. We're almost too deep at every spot. Is going to be this just jettisoned and not get snaps on the field. I believe they're going to use all of them. And, I don't know where this Ravens defensive line is as far as rankings right now. I don't really care about rankings a whole lot, but potentially if we get a healthy Matabike, 2024 version as far as productiveness and impact, this is a top 5 D-line in the NFL. No question about it. Calais Campbell is a devastating player in a 4-eye technique, and Matabike is as well. Travis Jones, we all know how,
especially over left guard. Or in between left guard and left tackle. Calais has dominated that spot, man.
With
these left guards in this league just are not built to deal with with Calais, and he'll like much like Brent Urban. Calais will give himself a little extra space back so he can just get his arms on you, and he's controlling the point of attack. Coach, did you have anything else to say? I cut you off there. I actually did have one more question for you before we wrap it up, and it has to do with this defensive line.
We've got good players here up and down the defensive line. I mean, we've got, Adisa Isaac, obviously, Ravens fans. We have, I would agree with Eberst. I think that the Ravens defensive line, if everyone's healthy and available for most, if not all of the season, the sky's the limit for real. The only lack of depth that we have is possibly inside linebacker, but we still have 3 guys there who have started a significant number of games. Obviously, Roquan is the headliner there between Simpson and Buchanan. Hopefully we get 1 effective Will, maybe 2. They've each got separate and very distinct and different strengths. I'm talking about the 2 Will linebackers. I think Mentor's going to use all of them. I don't think that anyone's going to be week 1, hey, you're not a starter and you're just over there and you're never going to be a starter. Conversely, the other side of that coin, I don't think anyone is, hey, you're our starter. No matter what happens, no matter how horrible your play is, you're our starter for the rest of the 17 games. I think,
and man, that's a sore spot on that road. Is that a sore spot among us after what we've seen the last 18 years with Coach Harbaugh, just sticking with people for too long out of hard-headedness and for whatever reason? 2 questions here, Coach. You mentioned Adisa Isaac. He's just getting back to practice. We haven't seen him his first 2 years. So for the purpose of this conversation, I'm going to pretend like Adisa Isaac is not part of this conversation just for now until he emerges. Maybe, hopefully, Adisa Isaac emerges during the preseason and allows us to keep a fifth outside linebacker if we want. The top four: Trey Hendrickson, Tavius, Mike Green, and Zion, the young bull, young. Great top four, I think, for the Ravens. I love it. Does Trenton Simpson, in his versatility, allow them to only keep four? The Ravens usually keep 5 players at edge, and they usually keep 5 defensive linemen. That plus Jesse Minter's creativity, he could go with more defensive lineman packages, especially while they're nursing the inside linebackers back to health. There's a lot you can do here, Coach. Aeneas Peebles seems to be emerging. He impressed the hell out of me at that stadium practice, just in the backfield on some of these run plays. So instead of going 5 defensive linemen and 5 outside linebackers, does Trenton Simpson's versatility allow you to keep Aeneas Peebles instead of losing him, and only allowing us to only go with 4 outside linebackers? Go 4-6 instead of 5 and 5.
Yeah, my thought would be, in a perfect world, yes. Buchanan completely healthy, Simpson completely healthy. I'm wondering now, given that Buchanan hasn't practiced yet at all, and I don't anticipate that he does. I think it's going to be a while before he returns, to be honest with you.
It's fair because they just signed a bunch of linebackers, as you told me earlier.
Exactly. Yeah. Jamone Johnson, I think they actually signed Ezekiel Turner. All 3 of these guys are Maryland players. Curtis Jacobs from Penn State, who I think spent a year with one team, and then he's just in the UFL, I think.
Right.
Just finished the season there. So 3 guys they brought in this week, to my knowledge, that are all will linebacker types, and
they need camp bodies. Man, they
need preseason bodies. I don't think we're going to see Simpson at all. I don't think we're going to see Simpson at all in the preseason because they know they know the timeline for Buchanan. They can say what they want about he's accelerated, he's ahead of the game. He hasn't practiced yet, in my opinion. The first game is 1 month plus 6 days from now. It's September 13th. So right. I don't think we're going to see Buchanan weeks 1 through 4. Someone earlier
pup in the list, chat. Right?
Yeah, so, so yes, your question, yes, it would allow it in a perfect scenario. Under what we have now, I think they've got to kind of protect Simpson, if you will. If he's not going to be on the field at will, then that probably means we're in dime, at least unless or until Buchanan is healthy. I would love to see them use Buchanan and Simpson, not interchangeably, because they don't have the same skills. Pass coverage, Simpson's huge benefit over Buchanan. Buchanan more of a downhill run fitter right now, but doesn't have the man and the lateral movement skills, even when healthy, to cover running backs, let alone tight ends. So those 2 guys have a distinct area of the field, a distinct manner in which they would cover an area of the field. So I hope that Buchanan returns healthy as soon as possible, and they use both of them. And then maybe at that time, yes, is the answer to your question. So Adisa Isaac certainly looks like either way he's going to have a hard time, making the initial 53, right?
When you mentioned using both Trent and Teddy, both are healthy, perfect world. Say we're playing a team with a mobile quarterback and it doesn't have a really threatening run game. Well, then that's Trenton's game. You let Trenton chase the quarterback, spy him, whatever. You're playing a statuesque type quarterback with a power run game. That's got Teddy Buchanan written all over it. So, yeah, I do think that there's a play. Or maybe it's certain personnel groupings. If the other team's using a fullback and a blocking tight end, hey, Teddy, get in there. If it's more of a spread look, hey, Trenton, get in there. So there might be certain cues. Like, hey, if you want to take the Ravens, for example, Teddy Buchanan, anytime Durham Smythe comes in the game, you're in the game. That could be a cue for that. So appreciate the answer to that question. But yeah, I'm starting to look at this Ravens roster, and a lot's going to start working itself out. Our first official show is next week as we preview that Philadelphia Eagles game, Ravens-Eagles at the Bank. Their only home preseason game. So hopefully Minnesota and DC's got their turf ready when we go there, Coach. But yeah, Coach, absolute pleasure tonight. Thank you for kicking this thing off with me. And you're right. It's so funny. Just to let you guys know behind the scenes, I text Coach to ask him if he'd be interested in something like this. He's out in the mountains, correct me if I'm wrong, but out somewhere that doesn't have service. And he goes to where he does have service and is like, look, I'm going to call you in a couple of days, but I actually was meaning to get ahead of in touch with you to do, ask you if you
That's
wanted
right.
to do a game preview show. So believe it or not, it sounds like an unbelievable story, but we were both trying to get to at each other at the same time for the same damn idea. So to me, it's just like,
Well,
bam.
I forgot all about that. It was Pennsylvania mountain air. My brain didn't have enough oxygen, perhaps, so I forgot about. No, absolutely, yeah, I do remember it now. That you mentioned it. I mean, live streams were always fun for me before. So many of the variables, we'll put it that way, popped up with YouTube in the last 2 or 3 years. I used to do it a lot on Saturday evenings. This works perfect for me personally. Again, it's once my wife and kids are, in bed, number one. Number two, it's at a time in the week when I'll actually be able to have watched some of the other team's film. I never felt comfortable putting previews out on Wednesdays or even Thursdays. To be honest with you, I'm
It's tough.
up until Wednesdays. I'm usually still watching the film to in my opinion, for me anyway, to the depth that I feel like I can understand it and explain it. Maybe other people are just faster than me. I don't think that you can. I can't. Excuse me. Let me rephrase. I can't be done with my
Review
work
the Ravens game
of
that
the Ravens
Sunday,
game and soon
and
enough
then
time to
start
get previews
preparing.
out.
Right,
Any
bro. Like,
any quicker than this. So this timing works perfect for me, and I'm glad it works for you. I hope people watching the live stream feel free to say, "Hey, this is what I'd like to see in a preview from you or anyone else, and this is what I don't want to see."
there you
Shut
go.
the heck up about turnovers in the run game and time of possession. Give me this or that, and we'll try to do that.
Yeah, and you're speaking to the choir on this because whoever we played last week or next week, I would start watching them on the Friday before, so I could do a Wednesday preview show and kind of know what I was talking about. But I wasn't watching their last game as heavily as I should be, so it was tough to do the preview show and my regular content on a Wednesday. So I feel so blessed to be working with you on this again every Friday night, 9 o'clock. Coach and I previewing the Ravens game that weekend. Um, the first 3 weeks are going to be a little different because they're preseason games. We're not prepping for an opponent. We're going to be talking about some narrative stuff. Maybe Coach will pick out some plays. Once week one kicks off, you guys will get to see the real show. So, Coach, thank you so much for joining me. Any final thoughts before I send us out of here?
Yeah, I mean the preseason is its own entity. First of all, as far as this goes, what we're doing every Friday night, you know, co-sign everything you just said. We'll be here every Friday night at this time, 9 o'clock. That is,
And
for about an hour.
pause for a second, Coach. I got Khalid up there at the bottom. Look forward to the previews during the
Yeah, man.
season. So thank you to Khalid. I've almost pulled this up like 3 times, and didn't want to forget you. Appreciate the support, and hope to see you back and making more comments so we can pull up your comments as this season goes along. So again, thank you, Khalid. Coach, I apologize. I didn't want to
Are you
forget
good?
about our guy in there, man.
100%. It's a different entity. The preseason is on. It's obviously its own season. Like for me, for example, with all the work that people like yourself, me, and so many others did for DraftSignal.pro, like I can't wait to see Eli Stowers next week for the Eagles. He's obviously not their starter, but super talented receiving tight end. Obviously played at Vanderbilt, and so that each week there'll be different guys that I'm looking forward to seeing, and maybe as we get to the second week of the preseason and the third, we'll be able to show you some plays of what some of those teams do. But generally, it's going to be what did the Ravens do well last week, or how do we anticipate the Ravens scheme fitting or matching up with the other team? And again, Friday night is the perfect night for me to do that because I will have looked over at least one or two games of the upcoming opponent. But it's a lot of fun. Looking forward to it. I like that we've set a day and a time for it, because then it really helps everything else flow before that. I can back map, what I want to do from a film standpoint on my channel.
There you go. And, I mean, I have to give up, going to the club every Friday night, fending off all the ladies, buying a booth and drinking champagne and pouring one out. But I'm willing to do that for you, Coach. I'm willing to do that. What's a Friday night? Another Friday night at the club. I'd rather be talking football with you. Yeah, Coach. That was all a lie. I have nothing else to do. I'm going to be talking some football and watching some film, and I can't wait to be pushed by you to watch some more stuff, to do some more studying. So, with that, I want to say thank you to everyone who's joined. Thank you to everyone watching on all 22 films with Coach. Thank you to my football family. You know I love my football family watching on Huddle It Up Films. And with that, we will see you next week, Friday at 9 o'clock, as we preview this Philadelphia Eagles game. Coach, please say goodnight to everyone, and thank you.
Appreciate you guys. Like I said, if you got any suggestions for how we could tailor this to the Ravens audience, let us know in the comments section or hit either one of us up on Twitter.
Thanks, guys and ladies.
Appreciate it, guys.